Welcome to Amra's Armchair Anecdotes. I'm Amra Pajalic, writer, teacher and storyteller. Pull up a chair and let's dive into stories about writing, life and lessons learned, sharing wisdom from my armchair to yours. You can find the episode show notes, your free episode handouts and my how-to guides at amrapajalic.com/podcast. And now it's time to dive in. Welcome to Amra's Armchair Anecdotes. This is the first episode of my podcast as I transition into an interview podcast. And my first interviewee is Fikret Pajalic. He came to Melbourne as a refugee, learned English in his mid-20s and started writing. He won and placed in competitions, published in anthologies and literary magazines. His fiction has appeared in Meanjin, Overland, Westerly, Etching, Sleepers, Antipodes, The Big Issue, Hotel America, Wisconsin Review, Minnesota Review, so many places. I think over 50 publishing credits internationally for his short stories. And he was awarded in 2014 a Creative Victoria grant, in 2015 an Australian Council grant for the development of his literary manuscript. He is married to me, so we've actually been married for 28 years, and he is the first author that I published under my press, Pishukin Press. This is his short story collection. It's called Complication. And so welcome, Fikret, to my podcast. Thank you for being my guinea pig, I'm calling him, as I learn how to transition into an interview podcast. So first, I just wondered, could you tell me and the audience about how and why you started writing short stories?
Okay, so I came to Australia as a refugee in 1994, and it took me about 10 years to realise that I suffer from PTSD. Mm-hmm. That was the time when people weren't talking about mental health issues, especially men. So it took me a while to realise I suffered from, post-traumatic, whatever it's called.
Stress syndrome, yeah.
At the time I worked for the Department of Justice, and I witnessed something which was really disturbing, and part of the process was to go through EAP, Employee Assistance Program, and I spoke with a counsellor, had a few sessions, and then she suggested that maybe I should put some of my previous experiences in writing, so that in a way that's you're supposed to deal with it, but it was a bit of a catch-22 for me because, or double-edged sword I should say. Every time I wrote something, I got hurt again.
So it triggered it a little bit.
Yeah, it was triggering. Mm-hmm. But I kept writing, and she read some of the stuff, and then she said, maybe you should turn some of this stuff into stories or something like that, and then like a memoir type of thing, but I wasn't really in the mood to do memoir. Mm-hmm. So some of the stuff that I went through, I turned into short stories. So that's kind of how it started. Mm-hmm. But it took a while for me to kind of get them really to a publishing standard. Mm-hmm. A lot of reading, writing groups, that sort of stuff. So that's how I started.
So can you talk to me about getting your stories published and your approach to that?
Well, I remember writing my first story. It was called Leaving. It was about 700 words, and you read it.
That's right. I was kind of his mentor.
And I asked for feedback, and I thought it was the best thing ever. And then you pulled it apart.
We had a little bit of a tiff, as you do. When you're an emerging writer, it's very hard.
And I was at that time still precious.
Yeah.
So it took me a couple of days to get over it and start rewriting and taking your feedback into, putting it all together. Then it turned out to be like almost 3,000 word story. Mm-hmm. The biggest takeaway from that first feedback is show, don't tell. Mm-hmm. In writing, you have to show things rather than just say, And shortly after I joined writing group at Caroline Springs Library, which was a really good one because there were a lot of aspiring authors or writers who gave fantastic feedback, and that helps you further polish the story. Started submitting and developed this strategy of revolving door submissions, where I always assumed that when I send a story to a magazine that it's going to be knocked back. And I already had planned where that story is going to go next. So if I'm submitting to Meanjin, they're going to knock me back. So I'm going to go to Overland, they're going to knock me back. I'm going to go to a short story competition maybe. So you just kept submitting, never expecting to be published. And when you get published, it's great. Yeah.
And can you talk about, because with Overland and Meanjin, one of them took 12 submissions and one 14 submissions.
Yeah, I don't know which one, but it took a while. And basically you kind of keep knocking on the door. And when they realize you're serious editors, with both those magazines, they kind of, they take you seriously, they give you more in-depth feedback.
Yes.
Or suggestion where to go with your story. It's not for us, but try there, and things like that. But yeah, when I got published in Overland, that was like a big
tick of approval.
Big tick.
Yeah.
And then subsequently, I think I got published another 2 or 3 times at least with them. But Meanjin was one that I really wanted to get in because they're like the literary journal. And I got a few knockbacks and eventually got published. It was Complication story, which is a title of the short story collection as well. And it was Zora Sanders who was editor at the time, and she was really kind and patient and took me to the steps, a lot of feedback and polished story. I polished story even with her even further. And yeah, that was like, when that got published in Meanjin, I was really happy.
And what was your view about working with editors and when they gave you feedback?
Well, it depends on the editor. Like with these more established magazines, they're really good, especially if they've been in the job for a few years. But I had some kind of weird experiences with new magazines where editors are not as experienced, that they try to chop and change a lot, I guess. But it was only like once or twice where I decided my story was accepted, but it just wasn't a good fit. Like there was their vision of the magazine and then my story, and I'm like, change this, change the other thing, and blah blah blah. I remember being published in one of the American journals. I can't remember what it is. And I submitted like a, 4,500 word story. And this editor, she slashed it to 2,000 words. It was basically my favorite author is Raymond Carver, and he got advice from his longtime editor. I can't remember his name. I think his surname is Leash something. He told Raymond Carver, every time we write a sentence that it's 15 words, make it 5. So that's what she did with that story. And when I read it first, I'm like, what did she do? I'm like, wow. Then I read it again, then again. I'm like, oh my God, she made it really good, really to the point. It was like every sentence counted. 99% of the time I just go with the editor, because very occasionally they don't know what they're doing, but very occasionally. So
and you also
then you have to take a stand. You say no, I can't change that.
Yeah, and you also had these editors write you letters of support when you were applying for the grants.
Zora Sanders did, and I can't remember the name of the person who wrote it. I don't know whether it was Jennifer Mills at Overland, I can't remember, but yeah. So because you establish the contact, especially if you get published a few times. Because after I got published with Meanjin, I actually wrote my first memoir piece, which was also published in
Can you tell us what happened with that piece?
I don't know. What do you
Well, wasn't there an editor who contacted you?
Yeah, there was a guy from one of the publishing houses who said, I loved your piece, can you write a memoir? And I said,
Yes, and had your wife, who was working on a memoir for 5 years at the time, feel?
But I offered him my short story collection, but he was interested in memoir, and I didn't have like 50,000 words, and wasn't ready to. Just memoir's not my thing. But memoir piece in Meanjin, it was like what do they call it? Narrative fiction, not narrative non-fiction type of thing, where you read it, when a person reads it, then sometimes they're not aware that it's non-fiction.
Yeah, it reads like a fiction piece.
It reads like a fiction piece, but it's actually in that particular memoir piece, which was nearly 6,000 words, I think. And for such a long piece to be published in the end, and that's like a lot of pages. Yeah, they dedicated it. I'm very proud with that one, because the only memoir piece I think I've written. Actually, there was something in a big issue, which was 700-800 words, that was published as well. But don't ask me what it was, I can't remember.
But this is the thing about short story publication and short story opportunities. It's building those networks, and also what I always come back to is when you put things out there, you don't know what's going to come back, who's going to read it, who's going to connect with it, what reaction you're going to get. Did you ever have another reaction that, like, where someone contacted you that was surprising?
I can't think of, maybe it's been a while since things published.
So you had your short story collection published by a very prestigious micro press called Pishukan Press that is run by someone. So could you talk about the process of collaboration for the cover and the publication process?
So as you know, I've been trying to get short stories published for a while and keep getting knockbacks.
It's a hard sell for publishers, short story collections.
And they like the stories, but they say, "Oh, we love this story, can you expand on it?" And blah, blah, blah. So, but I really wanted short story collection published, and then I was disappointed, got discouraged, dropped, didn't think about it for a few years. Then you started your publishing house, and it was a while before we came to that kind of idea.
I was practicing, I was like getting all my books that were the rights back to.
Kind of getting experienced in the publishing, whatever it's called, area. And I think it took me a while to see your point of view, that it's time, because it's not going to get published somewhere else. And so I'll let you do it. I've got some good reviews and a few famous Melbourne authors.
Yeah, so we got endorsements from
Lee Kaufman.
Which
I was very happy about.
Yeah.
When she said yes, I was so happy.
Yeah, we got some beautiful endorsements. So that was really, really great. And also, like, you had a vision for the cover in terms of complications. So do you want to talk about that? Because we worked on that quite a bit.
Yeah, so that's, I'm probably going to be spoiled if I talk too much. Because
that's okay.
There's a short story, Complication, in this collection, and it kind of revolves around old-fashioned wristwatches, and they all have complications in their mechanisms. Like if they show time, that's one complication. If they show seconds, that's another complication. And there can be many, many different complications. That's those little mechanisms are referred to in watch building industry. So some of them, they can show moon phases or something like that. That's like really intricate complication. So, and our lives are basically full of complications.
Yes.
So, and I think the whole book, when it's read, it's basically you read a story, then another story, and you get to the end. It's like one complication after the other.
What would you say are some of the themes that you deal with?
So it's mostly, Australia, Western suburbs, refugees, Bosnians who came as refugees, racism towards refugees,
That's a big one.
towards different cultures and religion, and people with different names like mine that are hard to pronounce and that sort of stuff. But also, there are a lot of animals in every story. There's an animal, dogs, some cats, mostly dogs, even though I never had a dog, but cats. So there's kind of theme going through all stories.
And there are motif and symbolism.
So that's basically, they're all kind of based on my experiences. Maybe not all, but some of them are based on the experiences of people that I know or knew, and they told me the story. Because we share the history in terms of we went through war camp as refugees, but they have different stories. And somebody maybe told me a story, this is what happened to my brother when he was in Bosnia during the war, or this is what happened to my sister when she arrived to Australia. She was, there was one story with a single mother and 2 kids who arrived from Bosnia to Australia, not knowing what happened to her husband. And so I took that little thread and made it like a quite a long story. Developed it further without,
So using the inspiration of all these things that you've heard, people you knew.
Did it happen to me, or it happened to community I come from?
That's the thing, isn't it? It's all like we collect stories, especially when we're writers. We're just constantly having conversations and collecting these stories, and they find their way. Yeah, we weave them in.
They kind of stay in your head, and then you're like, I can use that.
And that short story that you're talking about, Flock, it's really,
Flock, yes, that's right.
It's really quite beautiful because it's a single mother who's about to be evicted, and it's about this hardship.
So all that really happened.
Yeah.
But then
it's also about hope in hopeless situations and people being good.
And getting help from unexpected places.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing, even though your stories, they have this thread of sadness and this thread of reality, there is this sense of hope and this sense of joy and connection that people find in unexpected places.
I think on your website you have trigger warnings, because some stories are very, very confronting, and I got that feedback where people read some stories and they feel like they're being punched.
But we both write dark. And so for us, we're like, well, this is just life and this is what we write about. But then they're
not all like that, but there are a few of them that are quite...
Yeah. And that's what I do now with a lot of my writing, especially the war book that I'm about to release. I have content warnings where I'm like, there's some people who want to know about it. I don't want to put it in the book. We didn't do that with your book. We didn't want it in the book because it can be seen as spoilers and we don't want to spoil it for people. But if there are people who need to sort of be aware of certain things, then we've got a QR code and it takes them to a page where it's got content warnings, and that way you've got that heads up. So we're just sort of trying to navigate this new, because we also use a lot of real language and a lot of Western suburbs, that's how we talk. Then some people find that confrontational. Now, you might have a further short story collection in the works.
No, I don't know about that.
You don't know about that? There are more stories because you have written like over 50 short stories. And so
I've written more. Over 50 have been published.
Over 50 every month. So we theoretically could have 3 like another 2 collections worth.
Theoretical.
Yes, so I just need to slowly work on him and get this sorted, because this is something that I want to do. This is kind of my life's work. Now, in another area of your life, you did a Master's in Arts Administration, and you are now an arts officer delivering exhibitions in visual arts in arts councils. So what advice do you have for new artists in this area?
So I worked with a lot of established artists and emerging artists.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of established artists, they're quite good. They've been like Lucas Casper, we both know. Mm-hmm. They know the process, and then I guess the main advice I have, I don't know if it's even advice, but for emerging artists, like, don't be precious.
Mm.
If somebody approaches you, or you were shortlisted to be exhibited by a council here in Melbourne, just take it and work with the arts officer.
Yes.
And try to adjust as much as you can to their vision, because it's hard to have exhibition. Yeah. And don't be precious. I've seen some of the young artists that are like, that's not my vision, I can't, they get $3,000 fee, for example, to be exhibited. But they're demanding, or they're just kind of not flexible. Because councils, basically, they will never, most of them, they're not going to put something on their walls in gallery that's too controversial, or so they might get complaints. So, it's your first exhibition, you're getting some exposure. Yeah. So just don't be too precious about your art.
Yes, it's that issue of artists wanting to have a vision and wanting to push the boundaries, and seeing this as perhaps censorship. But it's also like, you have to understand who is funding this, who is paying you for this.
Yeah. And there's always time for that later.
Yeah.
With your next exhibition, or late, when you establish yourself, then you can, if you, in private galleries, they can, put whatever they want, basically.
Yes.
So that can be their aim further down the track. But to get to that point, you need to, establish, you need to get exhibited with local council, and that sort of stuff. So,
and I guess going back to talking about the short stories that you had published and working with editors, it's about developing your skills, about having those opportunities, and about learning from it and building, your skill level.
It's very similar, where you kind of you trust the editor, or in their case, they trust the arts officer. It's nurturing them in a way to get that first exhibition done. And most of them are fun, and they accept all of us. Every now and then, you get a person, illusions of grandeur. It's like, oh no.
And the problem is sometimes when things happen too early and you don't quite know about the world, you don't realise opportunity. Like, I remember when I got published with my debut novel, and I was at a conference called Reading Matters Conference. And I've never been to that conference. I didn't know what it was. I didn't realise what a big deal that was until years later, where I was like, oh my God, that was a really big deal. My publisher, Text Publishing at the time, got me on a panel, but I did not have any idea what that was. And that's sometimes the issue. You don't realise until afterwards, where you're like, oh, that was an amazing opportunity that I don't know I'll have again. So any last words on the power of arts for well-being and joy?
Oh, I guess if you're a writer, keep writing. If that helps you deal with your mental issues, if you have any, and we all have some. Similar with visual arts. Yeah, what was the question?
Last words on the power of arts for well-being and joy, because you were talking about that you started writing because of counselling.
Yeah, but for me it was a bit difficult, because...
Was it ultimately cathartic? Did it help?
I don't know. Yeah, maybe. Maybe.
You're being cautious here in terms of our health.
Yes, because I got hurt again.
Yeah.
When I was, putting it on paper, so...
You get that secondary trauma.
Yeah. Eventually it gets better, and it all depends on the person how they deal with that. So, I don't know, I'm probably not the best person to give any mental health advice. Because I went through anxiety and depression, and, every now and then I still, I might have a really bad morning, but great afternoon, and it's just kind of up and down. Or good month, and then next month it's pretty crappy. So yeah.
And I guess since we're talking about it, this is the residue of being a refugee. Can you talk a little bit more about your experiences as a refugee in Germany, just to give everyone some context? Austria, sorry, always confuse those two.
Well, I didn't have any status there because I was basically kind of illegal in a way. It was all in limbo because. Western Europe kind of didn't experience refugee wave for a while, and there was almost this thing where it's like, how can a white person be a refugee? Normally people from my country would go to Germany and Austria and Switzerland to work, and for economic reasons, and then waves of people came with nothing, and it was confronting for those societies to see that. And also, I remember I met an Englishman in Austria who came as a tourist, to do some skiing or whatever, because I was in a little town high in the Alps. And then he said something along the line, I can't comprehend that this is happening to white people. That's what he actually said. So I thought we were, that Western society in Europe, that's never going to happen again. Especially after the Second World War, what happened to Jewish people, 6 million Jews were in Holocaust and all that. And like, it's happening again to another group of white people.
Can you contextualise the war? So we're talking about Yugoslavia, the breakup of Yugoslavia, and the fact that, Bosnians were then independent, and, there was a conflict as a result of that. So just so we have that context. So you had some really terrible things happen when you were in Austria in terms of that limbo and the effects of that. All right, well, thank you so much for being my
It's hard for me to think about.
It's hard, but I really appreciate you.
Those questions weren't on the list.
They weren't on the list. I sort of took the thread.
I wasn't really prepared.
No, so I really appreciate you talking about that and sharing that. So thank you so much.
Maybe in my next interview.
Maybe for your next short story collection, wink, wink. So thank you so much for being my guinea pig, being the first person I've interviewed, for helping me set up the studio. He has helped me so much in terms of all my beautiful armchairs and all my equipment. And thank you, I hope, to those of you who might be watching and listening to this, thank you for joining me for this episode of Amra's Armchair Anecdotes. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to Amra's Armchair Anecdotes. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and follow for more insights, stories and inspiration. From my armchair to yours, remember, every story begins with a single word.